I still think Quicksilver Grail's 2-star rating, by the way. Hey guys, it's Caban with True Champion Gaming, and today we're here to talk about some FTC relevant rules. So this is the second set of Grand Archive, and it isn't out yet. We still got about a month to release, I believe, but you know, whether you're just looking forward to it or you're actually theory crafting or practicing and trying to get ahead of the curve, these are going to be some really important rulings and interactions that you need to know about before you really spend all that time practicing something incorrectly. So let's just hop right into it. So for number one, we're going to talk about Frostbinder Apostle versus Arthur. So this is an interaction where if you play Arthur in rest and give it immortality, and then your opponent plays Frostbinder Apostle on their next turn and brings its health to 0 because Arthur has less than 4 health and would go to 0 if you do Frostbinder Apostle, Arthur will not die. That immortality will stick, and it's something that we wanted to start the video off with because I do know that other games have handled that differently. So depending on your background of what game you came from, that might not be as obvious to you. So immortality really is immortality in that game. The only thing that I think can get rid of immortality is if you play another unique ally. Like if you tried to play a second Arthur, the game will force you to choose one to keep. So that's a very simple ruling to start off with. The next ruling that we're going to talk about pertains to the card Beastsoul Visage. Always have a hard time saying that card's name. So this is referring to the mechanic of giving something pride. So this card will give in a linked ally pride 3. Now the first thing that I thought of when I saw this card was, well, what if it already has pride? What if it has something like pride 5 or pride 2? So basically what happens is that it will just gain that pride. It will not replace any pride already on that card. So for something like pride 2, it will have pride 2 and pride 3 because it's getting that from Visage. So if you are level 2, you will be meeting some of the pride requirements, but not all of them, so you won't be able to attack. And the same thing for something like pride 3 versus pride 5. If you're level 3, yes, you would be able to attack with it if it only had Visage on it, but since the unit that it's attached to has pride 5, you need to also meet that requirement. So just know that pride does not replace, it adds, and you need to satisfy every single pride condition. We're going to move on to ruling number 3, which is something that I actually learned like right before recording this video, and it could have come up in DOA meta, except that the only cards that preserve right now are Terra, and Terra's not really played too much. So but it is that preserving a card actually puts it face up in the material deck. So it's public knowledge for as long as it's in there. So normally you can't really ask your opponent to look at their material deck as everything's private knowledge in there. But with a card that is preserved, I can, if you've preserved 3 cards, I can ask to see your material deck and I can look through at the face up cards only. Please do not look at the face down cards. Those are still private knowledge, but so that is very helpful with things like Crawl, for example. Crawl is going to preserve cards every time he attacks. If he's sticking on the board for a while, you might be preserving a lot of cards. It's very important to know what cards are in there. That's a very, very important thing, that those are going to be face up instead of face down. Our next ruling, number 4, is a super important one that we don't really have a lot of ways to really pull off now, but in next format FTC, it is going to become easier. So when you activate a Cleave card, let's say that your opponent is activating a Cleave card. The activation of that Cleave card is going to essentially like mark all the targets that would hit. So if you have 2 allies on the board, let's say, it's going to be like, okay, I activate this Cleave card, it's going to hit Unit A, Unit B, and Unit C being your champion or something. You can respond with a fast activation ally like Blanche and have it enter the board, and it won't get hit by Cleave because it wasn't one of those primary attack targets. Same with the new card that we're getting, Displace, is probably the one that's going to come up the most when talking about this situation, because it will take an ally off the board and basically immediately put it back. So because you've removed that ally from the board, it's been lost as an attack target, and even though it would be coming back onto the board when that Cleave resolves, it won't be one of those attack targets that's going to get hit. So you can definitely do a couple of tricky things to try to avoid that dreaded level 2 Lorraine sweep turn. The final ruling that we're going to talk about pertains to the card Tithe Proclamation. Now, drawing a card is tracked by the game. So when an effect like Tithe Proclamation comes out that tracks the number of cards for its effect, basically, if you've already drawn a card and then you bring out Tithe Proclamation, you will already have drawn a card that turn. It is not bring out Tithe Proclamation and then start counting cards. It is already going to be counting that effect before Tithe Proclamation is already out. So if you draw 3 cards and you bring out Tithe Proclamation on your turn, and then you try to draw more, you can't. So this can be really helpful with something like Quicksilver Grail, because you can wait for your opponent to draw multiple cards, and then when they try to do, like, you know, a second Arcane Disposition or something, you do Grail in response, and then you're going to shut that off, and they've wasted their card now. So just a really important thing to remember is that the card isn't tracking it, the game is itself. That's it, guys. We try to keep these ruling videos, you know, detailed but short at the same time. We will be posting more. We usually try to do about 5 interactions or rulings in one video, so you know, hopefully you guys can learn some from this content. We'll try to make like a little playlist of all of them as well, so if you just want to kind of binge them. And you know, I think knowing your rulings is a really important part of winning the game. You know, like having these interactions go the way that they should absolutely can be the difference between a win or a loss. So make sure to check out our other ones, and as always, have a good day. Peace.